I'm the Director of Education here at the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens. And this is really exciting for the museum for many reasons. One, it allows us to celebrate the current exhibition that we're all sitting in, Vision 2002. This is the second in a series that we have done highlighting the incredible talents of our local and regional artists. So I hope during the evening you will have an opportunity to view the works of art in this collection. Because of this exhibition, it seemed like a natural fit to use the visual arts to highlight the other art forms. And of course, poetry or literature seemed like a natural fit. It's been a long time since we have done a series of poetry readings at the museum, and it's something that we really do want to generate interest in again. We would like to see these really happen on a quarterly basis, where the audience will grow. We can use it as a venue to highlight established local writers, but also emerging writers, including students. So that's a very strong interest to the museum. We have two very, very talented writers with us tonight who are going to read some of their current work. When we are done with the readings, I invite all of you to join us out in the loggia. We have coffee and biscottis that were donated by Biscottis, so what better thing than that? And it will give you an opportunity to meet the writers, to mingle with the other people who are here in this group. And Sue, in particular, Mary Sue, who I'm going to introduce you to, will have her hot off the presses book available and is here to sign it if you are interested in that. So I encourage you to join us after the reading. I'm going to introduce our first reader for the evening. Her name is Mary Sue Koeppel. And I have to tell you, it's very hard to introduce Mary Sue Koeppel because I feel like I could stand here for 30 minutes and go on about how marvelous she is. As a writer, as an educator, as a very kind of non-traditional thinker. She's an incredible motivator. She's just, I could go on and on and on. Mary Sue Koeppel is a professor at Florida Community College of Jacksonville and is considered really one of the outstanding educators in the state and was recognized as so in a statewide award for university professors. She is also the editor of a very important literary journal entitled Kalliope, a journal for women's art and literature. And so she plays this wonderful dual role of writer, but also an advocate and supporter of writers and visual artists as well. She also does writer interviews for broadcast. She has had her work published in 50 different journals and magazines and publications. So she's a very, very gifted person. And as a personal aside, Sue is involved in a program that we have here at the museum entitled Women of Vision. It's a program that is very close to, I think, Sue's heart, I can safely say that, as well as to many of ours. It's a program in which we teach the visual and literary arts to a group of women who are visually impaired and blind. We have been sharing our time and learning from these women for the last 4 years. And Sue very generously gives her time to teaching these women about writing and creating their memoirs. And I don't think there are very many writing professors who could do as good a job as Sue has in replacing pen and paper, which these women are unable to use, with voices and tape recorders. As an educator, she has really had to adapt and change the way she teaches and the way she's able to inspire her students. And I think in turn, she has been inspired. And I know I have as a visual arts teacher for them. We had an exhibition recently of their visual works of art, and it was one of the first exhibits we had at the museum where we also included writing right in the exhibition. Their words were scrawled on the walls along with their visual works of art, and that show is now traveling around the state of Florida. So Mary Sue's impact is huge. See, I probably went on for, what, 7 minutes at least. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much more time, but she has very recently put out a wonderful new publication, which you will get the opportunity to see up close and personal later, in the Library of Silences, Poems of Loss. It was just reviewed in the Florida Times-Union this past Sunday. So if you still have Sunday's paper, you'll want to dig that out. So, Mary Sue Koeppel.
Oh, wow. After all of that Hope has said, I'm sure that
I have no way in the world of living up to all of that, but thank you, Hope. You are a wonderful woman. You are the leader. You are the inspiration. You give us energy. You give us enthusiasm. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to share with you a book whose cover was designed from a photograph that was taken just about this time of the month last year. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Yeah, I bet a whole lot of you just saw it a couple of minutes ago, right? This is a corner from one of the gardens out here. And you can see in the distance the arches, and in the distance beyond that, the river. This little book is called In the Library of Silences. And I wanted an image on the cover that would make you think library, but not the normal library, library of silences. And instead of having in the library books and computers, in this library we have silences. Because this whole book is about loss. And every single one of you at some point in your life is going to have to go through different kinds of losses, right? You lose a job, you lose your mom, you lose your dad, you lose a relationship. You get old, you lose your memory, you lose your voice, you lose your eyesight. You can lose many, many different kinds of things that you have to deal with. So this little book asks the question, if you go through loss, what is it like, and then what do you do? And so there are lots of ways in this book about healing and trying to recover, as well as experiencing loss. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. You're killing the music.
They're gonna
Turn, oh, okay. Is it kind of distracting? Is that what's going on here? Pardon? In the Library of Silences, then, if I could just read for you the very first poem, because it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the book. What do you do when you go through loss? You can fight it, you can get mad, you can curl up inside, you can disintegrate, you can grow, you can find all these things in nature that say, this is how it is. This is how it is. And so in the very first poem of the little book, I have a poem, well, I should say in the very beginning of the book, I have a little poem that says, begin with the heron and the bat. Herons, these beautiful birds that come to my backyard and fish in the pond behind my backyard. Do you like herons? Do you like bats? Bats to me are very frightening. And so herons in one sense represent what is beautiful in a relationship, in people that we know, in good things that happen to us, and the bat is the ugly part. And all my life, I have tried to wake up and understand that the good and the ugly, the good and the bad, have to both be dealt with. And how do you do it? Well, how does nature do it? The fox comes out and attacks the turkey dies, the feathers go into the pond and sink. And what happens? Nature rejuvenates itself. There's another turkey, there's another fox, there are more people who understand life. And so this kind of sets the tone for the whole book, that one way to accept loss is to realize that this is the cycle of nature. Begin with the heron and the bat. All these years I've slept, waking sometimes for a millisecond to see the blue heron stand on one leg or the Harley on the kickstand. All these years I've prayed for sight, for sleeplessness, so the bat flying in the door at dusk is no stranger, but a welcome bedmate. All these years I've prayed and now the sleeplessness and the blue heron above the pond welcome the bat who skims the skein of light dropping over the water, and the water drops over me, and the air says, holy, holy, holy. The red fox fights the wild turkey while the cat mews from the window. When the earth's shadow eclipses the moon, the dark pond turns black. The turkey feathers hold water and sink. There, the pond says, glory. The light sings hail, while the bushes whisper, hush, hush. Now that's the hardest poem in the whole book. So if you lived through that one, you can live through the rest of them. What I was trying to do is to set the tone of, it is reverent, the good, the bad. It is for us to accept. I have a poem in here which Anne Hyman, who did the review on Sunday, talked about. And this is a poem which is so powerful that I'm not going to read it to you. This is a poem about a car accident and how does one deal. This happened to me and my family. My brother and his 2 children were killed instantly right outside my parents' home. And my father gave me the assignment to prepare their clothes for the funeral parlor, for the funeral home, and for the burial. And so that's what the poem is about. Some of you have had to do something like that. Burying the baby, however, I will read to you. Some of you have had a miscarriage. Some of you perhaps have had an abortion. Burying the baby is the name of this poem. Out of the bathroom, mother calls me, "Come, please." I stare at the bloody fruit jar that she grips, the fruit jar. Imagine red raspberries, or bright purple plums, or even menstruation links. Anything but running blood. The poem is about a little girl who's perhaps 8, maybe 9. We're going to Grandma's grave, my mother says, and walks carefully, crying, into the sun, up the shortcut behind St. Peter's Church, to the cemetery. I see white stones around a white altar in a quiet afternoon. She protects the jar between her breasts so I can't see. Does a child speak in the city of the dead, this street of stones? Mother carries a trowel. We say nothing until we stand at, "Here lies Sophie." My mother kneels. She starts digging. There is a hole she makes at my mother's feet. We're laying your baby sister or brother next to Grandma. Still, she won't let me see. And I learned then, a baby can be born and buried, and no one will know but those the mother tells. Now, some of you are grandmothers, some of you are mothers, some of you are daughters, some of you are sons. Here is a poem of another kind of loss, not the loss of a baby because it's born and doesn't grow up. This is the loss of people who never get to have babies. They never get to have grandchildren. So what doesn't get told? This is for all the people who can't have children. What doesn't get told like the gnawing for a child, not a baby, not a tiny one, but someone to have a conversation with at breakfast, who will come home at night and will sometimes say, "That's okay, Mom, because that's the way I want it too." Who will turn into the long-haired daughter home for New Year's with her new child wrapped, it seems, in paper tissues and nibbling on a bottle and crying sometimes to a mommy and a daddy who would hand her sometimes to a grandma who would be you. You'd hold her and rock her and show her the way the cat strokes himself when he has made himself clean for her, and the way the azaleas smell like honey, and the way honey leans off a piece of warm toast, and you have to lick it fast, or it drains straight down to the carpet. You'd show her the way her grandpa snores when he dreams, and the way the alligator opens its mouth to yawn, but never to eat little ones. Together you'd watch the moon curl up to sleep. You'd hear a crow in the morning. You'd wait for the feel of warm water. You'd wait for the temperature of afternoon. You'd wait, and she'd watch, and even the sun would be with you. Now, that's a lot of loss. How do you deal with loss? Well, one way people deal with loss is they have a really good relationship. A couple of years ago, a woman came to play at the symphony, and her name was Miss Hinderas. Miss Hinderas played Rachmaninoff, the great Russian musician. And it said in the paper that she soaked her hands in guess what kind of water for 10 minutes before she started to play. And you think, would it be hot water or cold water? It was hot. I thought that was very interesting. She soaked her hands in hot water for 10 minutes, and then she went out and she had all this strength in her hands. And I was sitting at the symphony next to my husband, and this is what I saw. Well, Miss Hinderas does Rachmaninoff. She soaks her hands in hot water before she pulls those cold Siberian winds across the keys. You listen, hard, hand upon my knee, one vein throbbing like horse hoof beats upon the snow. I touch that vein, feel shelter here against all snow gusting in this blue dusk. So that's one way to deal with loss. Be in love with somebody who offers you that kind of help. Love. Here's another way to deal with loss. One of the things we do is we get old, right? Getting old is a loss. What do we lose? Youth, of course. But here's what we can do. We can praise the experience. And this is a praise of old women. See if you can hear this one. Praise old women shuffling to church, skin rustling against bones, teeth clicking of God, and mystical nights sighed into bed sheets. We think they're too old, right? They're not. Here's a poem that talks about the loss of memory. It's called Inside the Sign. And the sign says, guests are permitted only with permission of the family or the doctor. Some of you have probably gone to visit people in the hospital and you can't get in. This is a special unit for people who have lost their memory, and then when they try to get out, they're lost because they don't know where they're going. So you cannot go in unless you're buzzed in. This is the poem, Inside the Sign. We are family. Nurses buzz us in. The women yelp in their baths. the water's too hot, too cold, too lukewarm. They can't remember how they wanted water. Janet flips her birthday cards over and over and over, begs the nurse to read and reread the verses and the names. Who? She asks of each name. Our mother asks us, who are you? Where am I? Over and over. And if we can say it right, maybe the brown carnation in the December wedding, we will stir memories. And then we will hear her whisper, hello, girls. Have you ever been sick of it? The way I could express of how sick of it I was to pile metaphor upon metaphor upon metaphor, worse and worse and worse, okay? So these are exaggerated metaphors to show how sick of it somebody might be. It's called of it. See if you can think of a metaphor which is even worse than any of these, okay? When she says she is sick of it, she means that she will not try to swallow any more watermelons in one gulp. She will not eat one more bite of an oyster shell, nor swill down one more keg of lye. No. She has no more willpower to start the satyr on his rounds and service him when he comes back. No. She won't yell fire anymore when bed bugs burn, and she will not eat green cheese when the man in the moon gives lumpy buttermilk. No, she says, I am sick of it. So next time you want to do it, see how bad the metaphor is that you can come up with. I would like to read you two poems that have to do with what you might want to think about after someone dies. Have you ever had to do an estate sale, clean out the attic, put things away? I have had to clean out the attic. And these are two poems about cleaning out the attic. One of them is called The Last Part of Her to Touch. I went to the attic, and my mom and dad were born during the Depression, so they believe that you should save everything. So now that we have to clean out the attic, it's a room as big as this. I mean, and it is piled up to the ceiling on shelves that are lined like this. And so each time I carry more out, I find new things. And one day I found something that made me shake for half an hour, and this was it. The last part of her to touch. When I dug up my mother's body, the paper mache form, I stood it on yardstick legs, the naked bulb tilted a little under the eaves. 40 years ago, my aunts glued long brown paper strips up and down her neck to her thighs. My mother stood in paste and paper, drying. They cut her out. They let her new body stand to cure. Next time I saw the body, she draped silk around it, pinned black dresses, measured hems. Today, I see a shape like mine. Sloping derriere, breasts, waists presentable at 50. Dare I run my fingers over her, touch her brown breasts now, dream of white milk dribbling, and the way she must have held me then? It was very scary to dig up this form. This is my mother, and she looked just like me. I'd forgotten that. I thought she was this little old lady, right?
That's how you remember.
Yeah. This one is called The Hat. This one is also from the attic. This poem is not about hats, nor is it about the hair under the hat. It is about the woman who made hats, not for a living. She made kids, but for hats, she bought a shell, she painted it black, set her alarm for 6 a.m. to find feathers ripped from herons by hungry foxes. There is a hat in the attic. The hat is black. There is a veil in the attic attached to the hat. There is a feather in the attic standing on the hat. There is no woman in the attic standing under the hat. This poem is not about the hat. And I would like to read a poem that's addressed to someone who has died. When did you, is the title. When did you first hear snow scuttling along the drifts, lounging in the valleys, eating ice off the craters, speaking to the deer? Did they nibble above your city, your box? Does the wind drop off in the quiet? Does the time of the night enter your checking? Just tell us. When did you know you were gone? And I will end with the last poem in the book. It's a meditation. It's based upon a line from the Dhammapada, the Dhammapada being one of the holy books of the Orient. Perhaps this is another way to deal with grief, to deal with loss. The line from the Dhammapada is, wise men do not grieve, having discarded sorrow. Meditation. Sorrow is to be discarded, not thrown out like garbage, not fingered or sorted or given to the less fortunate, but discarded like old cells, like flakes of skin in the shower, discarded like long hair wound through a comb. Because a part that is not a part anymore is not grieved. Wise men neither mourn, nor weep, nor squint in pain, but sit in sacred stillness. Peace is the quiet discarding. Thank you very much for being such a good audience.